So my guest today is Alex Richards. Despite qualifying as a criminal psychologist many years ago, Alex accidentally forged himself a successful career in the world of technology. He's worked for some of the UK's biggest brands across retail, financial services, energy and manufacturing, and was appointed one of the youngest chief information officers in the history of the FTSE 250 back in 2022. He was recognised as a global top 100 retail technology influencer in 2021, and he's about to become a father for the first time. This is a truly authentic and relatable purpose conversation. Alex's lived experiences of working with purpose for just the last 6 months demonstrate the power of this deeply human experience. I really hope you enjoy it. Alex, welcome to the Excitable Soul Podcast. How are you doing today, my friend?
Yeah, excited to talk to you, James, as always. Thank you very much for inviting me on. Looking forward to getting in some deep stuff.
Brilliant. I for those of us that are joining on the podcast rather than watching us through YouTube, talk to me about the Boba Fett that's in the background here. It's like got the authentic dint in the helmet and everything.
Yeah, it has. Yeah, it's amazing. The people I'm on calls with who say you've got a welder's mask sat behind you. Yeah, it's
Blasphemy.
during COVID, right? Everyone's stuck at home, and the company I was working for at the time, we all made an effort to have at least something exciting in the background.
Yeah.
So over my left shoulder, I've got a replica of Boba Fett's helmet, and over my right shoulder, I've got a signed Leicester Tigers jersey from the 2022 season.
Brilliant.
Great conversation starters, right? But yeah, it does look a little bit like a welding mask if you're not a Star Wars fan.
If you don't know, yeah, I'm kind of in a spare room at my mum's house because we've got some work going on at ours, which actually used to be my bedroom, and there's kind of a sense of relief for me that the teenage posters aren't still on the walls these days.
You come full circle back into your teenage bedroom. Yeah, I love that.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Mate, there's definitely meaning and purpose in that. Maybe we can explore that as we go on.
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah, welcome. And we always try to kind of create a bit of a structure around the conversation when we're talking about purpose. It's one of those words, it's one of those things, one of those concepts where you say the word and people have some kind of idea of it, but actually when you kind of get under their skin a little bit, it can become quite difficult to wrestle with. And one of the wonderful things about all of the guests that have come onto the show so far is they've just brought a really unique perspective to the way in which they've kind of uncovered a sense of purpose, the way they've brought a level of understanding to it, and then been able to unleash it in their world. So yeah, excited to kind of go on that journey with you a bit today. And so yeah, let's start at the start. This whole principle and process of being able to uncover a sense of purpose. Like what brought you on the purpose journey? How did you even kind of start to think about this is something I need to focus on?
So it's about 6 months ago, I had a moment where I was sat in the office at work, and I just had this weight fall on me. Multiple factors in my life that weren't necessarily going to plan or as I expected, and I just had a moment where I sat there where I thought, what am I doing with my life?
Yeah.
And that's not it wasn't a negative feeling necessarily, but it was just a feeling that there was a question there that I really needed to explore, because there was so many facets at that point in time in my life which just weren't going to plan.
Yeah.
My wife and I had been trying for a baby for about a year by this point. We'd been through a whole manner of fertility tests. All the results were fine. Everything was absolutely as expected. And for us both, it's a really difficult time. This the purity in that one job as a human to reproduce that we were both struggling to get our heads around. So that was kind of adding a little weight to me. The fact that we hadn't got ahead with that. I'd moved company the previous year, and I'd moved from a super fast-paced retail industry with really big budgets for projects, really exciting technology, into a business that was a little bit behind the curve from a digital perspective. And that in its own right, just a slower pace, less money maybe to play with for projects. So there's elements really of the things that I'd found exciting in other jobs weren't necessarily there in the same volume in my new job.
Yeah.
And as pathetic as this sounds in comparison to the other two things, I'd recently retired from playing rugby.
Yeah.
So Alex, the rugby player, was no more. This core part of my personality and a big part of my life. I stopped playing rugby just because my knees are knackered and my body couldn't cope with it anymore.
Yeah.
but this whole collection of things just kind of all landed on me in one moment.
Yeah.
So yeah, I see a personal trainer once a week who's mainly been focused on trying to keep my body together during the last 20 years of rugby or whatever it's been. But I sat with him and just said the weekend after this moment, what am I doing with my life? I don't know what I want to do when I grow up. I'm really struggling with this sense of dissonance that the way my life is at the minute just doesn't
Yeah.
feel right, and I don't understand the reasons why.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's really what triggered this purpose journey and trying to really get into that. And I think, James, we've discussed this multiple times before. My purpose has always been there. It's always been the same thing. I just needed
Yeah.
to uncover what that purpose is. It's
Yeah.
not that
Amazing.
there's a new purpose that I've applied to myself here. These are
Yeah.
key drivers that have always been there, literally from as far back as I can remember.
Yeah.
And moving to a position where I can actually start to put words around purpose,
Yeah.
it's just been truly life changing for me.
Yeah.
So over the last 6 months, working through this journey, trying to understand the things that are important to me, what my key drivers are, being in a situation where if I feel under stress or I feel like things aren't going right, to be able to look back at this and what is a list of sentences that outline what my purpose is,
Yeah.
it really helps give me balance.
Yeah, amazing. And it's really interesting just to picking up on some of the language that you're using there, Alex, when you describe kind of this moment from a career perspective, this moment from a relationship perspective, and then this moment just from a personal kind of identity perspective. And you said sounds a bit pathetic in regard the other two, but even that, you have a sense of identity tied up in
Mm,
having played and been a part of this sport for such a long period of time. And
yeah,
so there's nothing pathetic in going, wow, I've made a choice to step away from that, which felt like the right decision, but it's left a gap, and I don't know what
yeah,
sits in that gap. At the same time as going, got a really big job, and there's kind of big shift, big opportunity, but there's a huge amount of uncertainty there, and then this just fundamental human experience of
yeah.
wanting to become a father and the kind of the investment in the relationship that you hold. What was kind of the trigger? You talked about like these three things all coming together. Like, what was the experience where you just went, holy, something's not right here, I need to do something about it? Because that, I think, for people listening, could be really interesting in just creating a level of awareness and connection to, I need to try and figure something else out here.
Yeah, and I think it was a mixture of these things on one day. So this particular day, the we'd paid for a really specific fertility test for both of us, and the results came back absolutely fine. So that landed in
Yeah.
on that day.
Yeah.
I had a text message. I'm still part of the rugby WhatsApp group. A
Yeah.
text message came through confirming the team for the weekend,
uh
and I
yeah.
obviously wasn't on the list. And that's probably one of the first times that I could have played that I wasn't playing. And at work, I think we're heading through a budget cycle at work maybe, and how the year was panning out, wasn't
Yeah.
necessarily how I'd expected it was going to be.
Yeah.
So these are all external factors, but again, hitting at once, and this just sense of I don't feel right in the moment. I don't feel like I'm connecting with all these things around me. There's almost a sense of grief, I guess, from stopping playing
Yeah.
rugby. It's been such a big
Yeah.
part of my life.
Yeah.
And what does the future hold? That's exactly in the moment. What does the future hold for me? What's next? What
Yeah.
is going to fill me back up with this energy that I've got from all these aspects of my life that might be starting to wane a little bit now? So yeah, a combination of those things, I guess. But I think I can remember the moment, and it feels, I don't know what the opposite of an epiphany is, but rather than finding having that moment where you think, right, everything's suddenly clear, I get it. It was the
Yeah.
opposite. It was everything's really murky.
Yes.
That's just hit me in the moment. Everything's murky. These things just don't add up. I can't make sense of the situation I'm in. It's really difficult for me to kind of see the light,
Yeah.
and it's probably quite a low point. And
Mm.
for me as a person, I'm genuinely quite positive, genuinely proactive. I'm very
Yeah.
action driven, and to be stuck in the moment of I don't know what to do next. I don't know what I can do to fix this situation. It felt it was just really really difficult moment to be in.
Yeah, and you know what is really wonderful here? It's just the kind of the relatability of the language that you're using in terms of just this moment that felt murky.
Yeah,
And we talk a lot on this podcast about what purpose is, and the kind of the simplest way is just thinking it is a feeling.
Yeah.
you feel purpose, and that when you feel connected to the things that really matter to you, you experience it emotionally. It creates that kind of sense of conviction. So the absence of it, to your point, I haven't had this kind of epiphanal moment of clarity, let's go.
Yeah.
It's
Opposite.
actually, this is what uncertainty feels like. It
Yeah.
feels murky. It feels like there is this kind of uh, questions everywhere of what, how, where, when, what does all of this look like, and a sense of, I guess, how do I move forward? What do I do with this? Like, where do I
Yeah.
go from this point?
Yeah. And I think, as a person at work, at home, I've always got the next action lined up.
Yes,
So
yeah,
there's
yeah,
definitely comfort for me in doing and moving forward, and just in that moment, not really knowing what the next step I should take is. And all
yeah,
these things in isolation, I don't think probably would have knocked me as hard as they did. But just
yeah,
a combination of these few really big things hitting me at once, I think that was. I'm not saying knocked me over the edge, because I wasn't at that point for sure,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
but it made me feel like I needed to spend more time introspectively,
yeah,
thinking about me, thinking about my place in the world, thinking about the impact I can have on all these things around me, and are there some different decisions I need to make in order to change the outcomes maybe that was facing.
yeah, massive. And one of the things I really love about doing this podcast is the magic is in the guests and their kind of experiences and the way in which they are kind of on a journey of purpose and trying to understand it. And you said right at the very beginning, like, this was 6 months ago. So this is
Yeah,
live, man.
it's
This is like
fresh.
real for you. Like, this isn't
Yeah,
I've been doing this for 20 years and here's my kind of my learnings, my reflections, and my wisdom to be able to
yeah,
create. This is the struggle that I'm in and continuing to make progress against. And so I think what would be really wonderful is if you could just talk to us about the kind of the experience of uncovering this kind of sense of purpose and the
yeah,
these meaning markers that you've been able to grab hold of that kind of feel true. They've always been there, and now I can see them and hold on to them. So just give us a
yeah.
sense of what are some of those, and how did they emerge for you?
Yeah, and it's probably worth pointing out, right? I've made a career in IT, but I actually qualified originally as a criminal psychologist. So it's a pretty big jump from the world of psychology, which ultimately at the time was a pathetic, active teenage rebellion against my mum, who was really keen that I was going to be a lawyer or a doctor or something else, super professional. But for me to do a degree in something that I really enjoyed and was looking forward to learning about,
Yeah,
into IT. So I think through my studies, I am really reflective.
yeah,
And one thing I think I'm very good at from an emotional intelligence perspective is I understand my impact on the world around me.
yeah,
And again, for your audio listeners, James, I'm quite softly spoken, but I'm a big guy, right? I'm 6
yeah,
foot
yeah,
5, 19 stone. Probably if you just listen to my voice without seeing the picture, when I see people at work I've only spoken to on the phone, they always go, "Oh God, man mountain."
yeah. For those
Um,
people, it looks like a freaking Viking. It could have
yeah, or
invaded.
look like a
And,
feral lumberjack today, I think. Um, so yes, I'm conscious of the fact that being in a leadership position for the last kind of 10, 12 years, whatever it's been, um, I'm a big guy and that can be quite domineering. So if I'm in a
yeah,
meeting where there's conflict or there's negotiation happening, I'm really, really reflective on my impact, both physically, the way I present myself, the way I can be
yeah,
quite abrupt and quite blunt. I'm very, very
yeah,
acutely aware of that.
yeah,
And through my studies, that reflection on me was really, really important. But I never went to the depth of purpose.
yeah,
So very, very conscious of my characteristics and how I work with best with people
yeah,
and how I bring the best out in other people. That's part of my career that I've absolutely loved and kept through from the psychology days through to the technology days.
yeah,
But the why is the bit that's been missing, and that's the bit that I've spent the 6 months working through. So again,
yeah,
this felt like a journey I wasn't equipped to go on by myself.
yeah,
So working with a purpose coach, which is one of these roles you don't really know exists, right, until you start looking for it and you start getting that
yeah,
support. But everything starts really with, for me at least, the conversations to unlock what the important things in my life are and what is my why. Really started looking back at early years. So
yeah,
part of the origin story, really understanding key events as a kid growing up that have really had formative impacts on me as a person,
mm,
and focused on those individuals, those people in my life at the time that I've adopted their values or a version of their values.
yes, yeah, yeah,
So I guess exploring some of that, and I guess we could talk some of that because it's really, really important. But my
yeah.
hero
Who
is
who
my
who are
is
the
my
one
mum.
who are the one or two that are
Yeah,
immediately front of mind?
So my mum's my hero. She's still my hero. She passed away in 2013 from
Yeah,
lung and breast cancer, but she was my hero, right? She was my
yeah,
hero. So we grew up in a council estate in Nottingham, a single parent family. Her and my dad split up when I was about 4 or 5.
yeah,
They were both really young when they had me. I think my dad was 21 when I was
yeah,
born, and I can't imagine. I'm scared about having a baby now. Never mind having a baby back when I was 21.
yeah,
He wasn't ready for that at that point in his life. So me
yeah,
and mum, from the age of 5 or 6, whatever, 4 or 5, we spent 10, 12 years just me and her.
yeah.
And she had a tough upbringing. She was at grammar school when she was younger. The grammar school closed down, and she ended up being dropped into a pretty rough school in the Meadows, and got
Yeah,
bullied, I think, for most of her time at school for being, the girl from the grammar school.
yeah,
She left home quite early, and kind of 15, 16, moved into a bedsit and started sweeping floors in a hairdressing salon locally. And she worked her way all the way through, from learning to be a hairdresser to then teaching other people to be a hairdresser, to then taking a leadership role in the college she used to teach at. And through all of this, her conviction was that she wanted a better life for me than she'd had.
yeah,
So she had this huge sense of responsibility for my future, not just for me as a child, but for what the future would hold for me. And
yeah,
she put an awful lot of pressure on me to succeed and do well and try hard, and all the aspects that she saw would make me more successful. But ultimately, as an individual, she was the most caring human I've ever met. She was
yeah,
strict, but when my friends came over, she treated them like they were her own kids.
yeah,
She always had soft spots for the kids that maybe came from poorer or rougher families than we were. And
yeah,
there'd be plenty of times I'd have friends come over to stay in winter who didn't have a winter coat, and they'd leave with one of my winter coats that my mum had given them. You know,
yeah,
so yeah, as an individual, she played a really important part in life for me, and just in shaping me and what's important to me. And her value set, really, that sense of responsibility and care for the people around her. She was a matriarch within the family.
yeah,
She held the family together. She made sure that everyone was looked after, everyone had what they needed, that everybody stayed in contact. And she was a real catalyst for encouraging communication across the family, and not letting people drift apart. So that was really
yeah.
important. But she
And what
worked
did
numerous.
and what the so when you talk about the kind of the significance that she's had in shaping you, like
Yeah,
you can feel it in the way that you
yeah,
talk because of the I guess the closeness and the significance of that relationship. But I'm wondering how um those experience you now embody those experiences.
yeah,
What are the bits of that that you've kind of taken on,
yeah,
especially since she passed 10 years
yeah.
10 years ago?
So there's a couple of big events which I hark back on, and that's been really formative for me. So I remember when my mum and dad split up, and I'd have been young kid.
Yeah,
My granddad pulling me to one side and say, "You're the man of the house now. You've got to look after your mum."
yeah, wow,
So the same way that mum was really caring and responsible for me, for even from a really young age, I've mirrored that back to her and
yeah,
felt a
yeah,
sense of responsibility for her. And as mad as that is, a kid trying to look after his own mum. But that aspect of my personality that developed then, I mean, that's me now. I've got
yeah,
such an acute sense of responsibility for those around me. And I don't just mean my family. I mean my
yeah,
department at work, the people I work
yeah,
closely with,
yeah,
my friendship group. I feel like I get I'm unofficial therapist to a lot of my friendship group who'll come to me when they've got problems in life and they just need somebody to bounce ideas off. So that sense of
yeah,
care and responsibility and putting others' needs ahead of mine a lot of the time, actually, that's
yeah,
been really pervasive for me, and
yeah,
obviously forms a real part of my purpose. Is I get, and this is a selfish element to a positive aspect, I get a real sense of satisfaction from looking after those people that are close to me.
yes.
So that's been really, really key to this.
And I'm really interested in the kind of the manner of the care as well,
Yeah.
Alex, because it's not just I like to help people, like, and helping people makes me feel good. That doesn't even cut it. That's kind of the superficial perspective on this. When you talk about care,
Yeah.
there's a depth to it, and there's a significance to it, and that coupling of care and responsibility means that
Yeah.
it feels different to the people that you're interacting with.
Hmm.
And that in its own right, how do you see that reflected back when you're in those kind of relationships?
Yeah, so obviously from my personal perspective, I think family members and stuff, they really value that element of care. I think I'm probably quite a solid member of the family that people can rely on
Yeah.
for stuff. So there's a real practical bit there. I think from a work perspective, it's probably slightly more interesting, I guess, in that I tend to have really strong relationships with my team. And it's really
Yeah.
important that, I really connect with these people on an emotional level, not just a work level.
Yeah.
And it probably can be quite intense at times, right? But I think, because I'm aware of this aspect of my personality and I can talk about this, when I join a business or when I'm hiring new people in, I can be really clear about, listen, this is
Yeah.
me as a person. This is what you can expect from me. If this working relationship is going to work, this is what I expect from you.
Yeah.
And I think people generally that I've worked closely with and worked for as well, this is an upwards thing as well as a downwards thing in terms of work. I think people have a really strong sense of what I need from them and what they need from me, and then how we
Yeah.
can move forward together.
Yeah. Amazing.
And I guess a lot, some of my team at the minute and in previous companies, I've massively supported them through some pretty horrific circumstances outside of work. So
Yeah.
people do feel they can come and have this conversation with me. They can talk about stuff that's not just work related, which is really important to me. I want that sense of connection to the team.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think from an effectiveness perspective, the teams that I've worked with that have had that closeness have always been more effective because you've got each other's backs. It's not about, that's not in my job description. It's whatever the team needs to do to move the business forward.
Yeah.
It's not always been possible, right? There's some companies I've worked at where people have been very professional, in their
Yeah.
words probably, and they wanted to keep things segregated. They don't want to share what's happening outside of
There's a
work, inside work.
distance. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's absolutely fine too. It doesn't detract away. But I work
Yeah.
best in a circumstance where I've really built these strong relationships, and I think the word I've used before is paternal, and that probably might be a little bit misleading, but that's the
Yeah.
kind of sense that I do put myself in that paternal position.
Yeah.
And I guess one of my characteristics in there that I'm working on, because that isn't always helpful. I don't want to fall always into a parent-to-child relationship with my own team. So I think
Yeah.
staying at the adult-to-adult level is something I'm really conscious of. But
Yeah.
it's in my nature to look after people and help where I can.
Yeah, and I think this the kind of the original question is, what have you discovered
Yeah,
on this kind of journey? And I guess there's something that will have always been there,
yeah,
uh, and some degree of consciousness around it is there, but then being able to see the kind of the inception, the genesis, the kind of the root cause for why that comes to the fore so strongly for you. I guess you have an even greater level of awareness and influence now over how you utilize that and where, because if if you just play back the fact that it was you and your mum for 12
yeah,
years, the two of you in a really tight relationship. You joke my going to university and doing criminology was an act of rebellion against my
yeah,
mum, who was explicit about being a doctor
yeah,
or a lawyer. um,
yeah,
but but that came from a position of, I want him to have more experience, more, do more than I was able to do. Yet look
mm,
at what you've kind of embodied. It's not about the what, it's not what you do.
yeah,
Actually, it's all about why you do it, and that's come squarely from what she was bringing to you for all of
definitely.
that time.
It is, and the balance of this, I guess, is the other main string to my purpose here, which is adventure and it's
Yeah.
novelty.
Yeah.
So there's the elements of care and responsibility that are so important to me, and that sense of responsibility I take for those people around me is stressful. And I
Yeah.
do feel I bear more weight from some of that responsibility than is probably healthy sometimes.
Yeah.
So the other part of my purpose, which is the balance to that, is adventure.
Yeah.
And I deal with the responsibility. I deal with the weight of things that are happening around me by running off on holiday and exploring and traveling and even daft things. And again, the Boba Fett Star Wars helmet behind me, I get that sense of adventure from getting lost in a Star Wars movie or Star
Yeah.
Wars series. There's
Yeah.
elements in here that I really need to do. And for me to understand actually what might feel like quite a selfish pursuit at times, going traveling. My wife isn't a massive traveler. She's a bit
Yeah.
of a home bird. She's quite happy being at home. The need for me to balance that responsibility and the weight that I'm carrying with me by having a holiday, by escaping
Yeah.
to do something completely different, by having an adventure, that has been a revelation. And it's made
Yeah.
mine and my wife's relationship stronger. And some conversations that we've had, which I never would have dreamed of having. I went on holiday by myself over the summer for just a long weekend,
Yeah.
but I was really again feeling the stress of working for a business in a challenging market where we're being hit by the economy,
Yeah.
where a lot of problems across my team, personal stuff that the guys are working through that I'm supporting them with as well. I just needed to run away for a weekend,
Yeah.
and I could sit with my wife and say, well, look, we've talked about this being important to me, this avenue of balance that I've found in having an adventure. I really need that this weekend, or whenever it was.
Yeah.
So for me to be able to explain and articulate in such a way the importance that being able to escape for a long weekend is going to really help me to bring balance back, to even out some of the sense of responsibility I'm feeling. I wouldn't
Yeah.
have had the words to talk that through with her at the time.
Yeah. And again, what's really wonderful here, in just the kind of the expressiveness of your language, this concept of balance. How much do we
Yeah,
hear about work-life balance, etc., as a kind of concept and as a principle, and people are wrestling with it everywhere. But what's incredible here is you're talking about attention,
yeah,
really. Like, here's this investment of energy that I'm willing to give. But in order to be able to do that and create a level of sustainability around that, what I also need is this time to be able to not be in it, not be
yeah,
immersed in it in the same way, and be stimulated by something that isn't generated from me. It's actually
yeah,
the nature of the adventure, kind of going into the unknown, doing something new, doing something that feels exciting, doing something that you're not necessarily in control of or have influence around. It's just it's something that you can immerse yourself in a completely different way. And the beautiful thing about purpose is it's the scaffolding to hold opposites, to hold tension.
100%.
It's okay that both of those things are true at the same time. It doesn't have to be an either or. And the fact that you've been able to find the language to not just convey it to your partner, which I think is the bit that you explicitly expressed there,
Yeah,
but also to be able to create peace within yourself, that I need this, and this isn't a selfish endeavor.
yeah,
Actually, this is an act of kindness to me. This is an act of compassion, and this will enable me to be the better version of myself more of the time, and therefore everybody's going to benefit. Because the
yeah.
last
And
thing we need is me over-indexing on this and kicking off because I don't have that.
the language again is really important, James. So you've said the way you've described that is an act of compassion and self-kindness. Before I started exploring this, that I would have classed that as a selfish act.
Yeah,
So just having the words and the change in that expression to understand this, and with those big factors in, so the big factor around care and responsibility, and the big
yeah,
factor around adventure, as two sides of that balance, as you say.
yeah,
As I sit back now and think about that moment 6 months ago where I was sat at my desk in the office with the weight of the world on my shoulders, rugby was an adventure.
yeah,
Coming off a hard week, knowing I've got 80 minutes on a Saturday afternoon where I'm going to completely forget about everything. I'm going to really get some, physicality on the pitch and
yeah,
forget about whatever had gone off. That was an element of adventure that I was losing from my life. And I
yeah.
didn't have the
Wow.
words to explain that. So
Yeah,
it's not just about a hobby that I'd stopped doing. This was an avenue for restoring that balance, knowing that
yeah,
however stressful the week had been, I would completely forget about it for 80 minutes on a Saturday and
yeah,
feel refreshed after that. From the the fertility and the baby perspective, and I will say my wife is pregnant now, so this is exciting. We've got a baby on the way, so yeah,
woo.
that's obviously a sense of relief in its own right. But the sense in the moment, that moment 6 months ago, of sitting there and thinking, I want to help my wife. I've got a sense of responsibility to try and make this thing happen,
Yeah,
and I don't feel I can affect that. So that
yeah,
helplessness in the moment, again, tying that back to purpose, and now I've got the language to talk about it all. I was feeling helpless because of my innate desire to want to help my wife and help
yeah,
the situation. And, as upset as she was about not falling pregnant during that time as well, despite all the tests being positive, the only thing that could have helped that situation was getting pregnant, right?
yeah,
I could say
yeah,
all the words in the world, be as supportive as I want, but that was the thing.
yeah,
So again, feeling at odds with my core purpose and knowing that now, that I wasn't able to care and take that sense of responsibility away from her, that was why I felt that
yeah,
way in the moment.
yeah.
Um,
Amazing.
and then the third bit around being in a company that was in a legacy industry from a tech perspective, having worked
Mm,
previously for some pretty high tech companies. Again, there's a novelty, there's an adventure in the technology innovation,
yeah,
and I just wasn't in that space. We had really, really important tech projects that we were working on at the time, but these are really foundational systems that we needed to upgrade and change. So previously, I would have been working on cutting edge tech, working with some of the biggest tech companies in the world to bring things to life,
yeah,
and that element of adventure had been taken away in the role I was doing at the time.
yeah. And I love this. We've just naturally kind of drifted into this idea of there's a piece around uncovering and discovering purpose, which is critical because, as you say, it is there. But then once you found it, it's a case of the interaction to understand it. And one of the things that I think just sounds really straightforward, but until you experience it, is a bit counterintuitive, which is, you're experiencing this tension because of the absence of purpose.
Yeah.
Simply. And the second that you're able to start to go, well, these are the things that are meaningful to me, right? These are the things that really matter. Where and how do I express care? What does this, sense of adventure element look like? And I'm sure that there are kind of more of those for you that kind of emerged in this work. But when you then are able to go, well, the absence of those has led to this moment of uncertainty and feeling murky and lost. But actually, now that I see it, I can not only retrospectively make sense of that feeling and therefore feel better about it. All right, yeah, that's why that happened.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. But now in the moment are able to influence everything from the kind of the type of relationship and the type of care that you're giving to the type of experiences that you have and you need and where you need them in order to be able to feel like, well, actually, I still don't know what the future holds.
Yeah.
I still don't know what that looks like because, we're horrific at predicting the future as human beings, but I'm quite happy to go into it because I have these
Yeah.
things.
Absolutely. And I start to look back through my life. And again, before this purpose element was there, before I had the words to talk about this. So I think about criminal psychology.
Yeah.
There's a sense of responsibility and care there for helping offenders to come to terms with the things that may have happened in their life that may have affected them psychologically to the extent where they've behaved the way they've behaved.
Yeah.
So there's an innate sense of care and responsibility in wanting to be in that space. But
Yeah.
by the same token, you're talking to some pretty interesting individuals. There's a sense
Yeah.
of adventure and novelty
Yeah.
in discussing circumstances you never would have thought you'd discuss in your life.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then even going back further, as a kid, being captain of school sports teams and wanting to take the responsibility for my teammates around me,
Yeah.
um, everything goes back, right? You can trace all these things back through. There's a really strong line. And as I said at the start, James, my purpose has always been the same. It's just over
Yeah.
the last 6 months I've been able to talk about it and put words around it. And even now, there's obviously I'm again, another part of my purpose in here. There's an element of control and autonomy that's really, really important to me, and I really feel a sense of struggle if I feel like I'm losing my autonomy. And that can be a
Yeah.
problem, with my wife and our relationship, and feeling like, just general relationships, the way they go. She asks things of me, I ask things of her.
Yeah.
If I feel that my autonomy is being trodden on, then I can feel a sense of unease there. But I can talk about
Yeah.
that now, and that's really helped our relationship. But at work, clearly I'm not in control of every decision. I'm not in control of the economy, the market. So there are things that sideswipers that we have to deal with.
Yeah.
But what I've got now is literally written down on paper 6 sentences which detail the elements of my purpose that I can read back and say, right, I'm feeling really uneasy, really uncomfortable now. I'm going
Yeah.
to check back against my purpose because one of these things or more is being trodden on now. And
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
why I'm feeling the way I'm feeling.
Yeah.
So just the
Brilliant.
process that I've been through here and working with my purpose coach, the framework was really good. We aimed originally to get to one purpose statement,
Yeah.
and that just really didn't work for me
Yeah.
because I
Yeah.
lost so much of the nuance and the detail that I'd had in the process of getting there. So
Yeah.
actually where I've landed is I've got 6 statements that talk about 6 parts of my purpose, and those are
Yeah.
the most important 6 sentences that I refer to multiple times through the day.
Yeah, love it, love it. And the
Yeah,
thing that again hopefully creates this sense of kind of de-risking or ease for people listening is that there's a huge amount of pressure that can be put on finding the right language, like having this why statement or having this deep clarity of purpose that's reflected in these words. And if and when we get there, brilliant, there's nothing wrong with that, because actually all that happens is that phraseology represents all of the things that you're talking. But if you don't get there, that's okay too, because what you're describing, these founding ideals, these meaning markers that have shown up in your life, having clarity on those, that's kind of the bit of the iceberg that sits under the water, right? So the
yeah,
purpose statement is the pokey bit that sits out, and everybody's like, wow, that's a really big piece of ice floating around. You're like, no, that's a tenth of the reality here, which is the bits that you're describing. They're the bits that sit underneath the waterline. And when you have connection to those
mm,
and you can access those, The bits that sit above the waterline, that's kind of just the icing on the cake. And who knows, it may come at some point, you may have an epiphany rather than the murky,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
and it just comes together. But in the meantime, it doesn't matter, because the bit that creates a sense of purpose, the bit that creates the emotional conviction, the bit that creates the faith and belief in what's possible, is the bit that you have visibility over.
yeah, and is actively changing the decisions I'm making day to day now. So
Yeah,
whilst in the background, like I said, this thing's always been there. Really subconsciously, these core elements of my personality and purpose have been influencing my decision making. The
yeah,
fact that I've surfaced them now means I get to that point a lot faster. So
yeah,
where a big event might happen, it might take me a day or two to get my head around it all.
yeah,
I've really shortened that lead time down now from something big happening and me feeling uneasy about it. Within the hour, I can have checked back against my purpose statements, understood
yeah,
where that dissonance maybe is showing up, and then either
yeah,
accept it and accept it's outside of my control, but at least I understand that feeling now,
yeah,
or actively move to balance that out. And this might be the sense of I've had a crap day, something bad's gone wrong at work or something, and I'm feeling a loss of autonomy or loss of control, or whatever aspect it might be. Those are the days I might go to the cinema, or I
yeah,
go to the gym, or I get just chase that little bit of adventure. Don't necessarily need to run
yeah,
away on holiday every time something
yeah,
bad
yeah,
happens. That's not what I'm saying here.
yeah,
um, but to just be able to react and really help to regulate things and bring things back down to a level that I'm comfortable with again.
yeah.
And it's part of the
And
human
again,
experience, right?
well, yeah, massively, massively. And I think this is again really wonderful in what you're able to share here of the kind of the reality of what you've experienced over the course of the last 6 months, is that again, purpose can feel overwhelming sometimes for people. It
Yeah,
can feel like it has to be this massive game changing thing, and sometimes it is. But it can also be, I need to get lost in a Star Wars movie for a
yeah,
few hours.
yeah,
That can feel as purposeful, as meaningful as anything else. That's the
yeah,
wonder of it, is when you create that level of awareness and interaction, you can access it in so many different places and so many different ways. um
yeah.
I guess what I'm interested in now a little bit, Alex, is when you look forward,
Mm.
now that you kind of have a sense of connection to these things, and you're looking forward to becoming a father and to kind of starting and entering into a new chapter. How do you feel that what you now understand and you now see is going to serve you in
Yeah.
in in that respect?
And I think, particularly, so we've got a little boy on the way. Particularly with that in mind, is my purpose going to stay exactly the same, or are things going to
Mm,
start to evolve once my
yeah,
life fundamentally changes? And I think I'm only going to know when I get there. So, but I
yeah,
am spending time thinking about this because it's really important to me um, that my son has the space and the time and the support to do what he wants to do and live the life that he wants to live.
yeah,
And the balance here is that my mum wanted that for me, but she felt she was in a really strong position to guide me in and answer some of the questions that I might have had to help me get there.
yeah,
So my balance is going to be how I take very similar steps to ones that my mum did with me, in really helping to guide, being strict, being supportive, being loving, but
yeah,
pushing and
yeah,
expecting from the boy without going too far.
yeah,
I don't want to be a completely domineering parent. My mum wasn't domineering; she was really
yeah,
strict. I never would have
yeah,
said she's domineering. I don't want to be a domineering parent that decides the every path that my son's going to take.
yeah,
So really, really conscious of that and how that manifests. But in its own right, it's going to be an adventure. This is
yeah,
unlike anything that's ever happened before in my life. This is our first child. And obviously I'm super excited about what the future holds. And the sense of care, sense of responsibility for my wife is going to be a fundamental change to her body through the process here.
yeah,
And I'm going to do my best to support her through that, as much as I can. And just the what's life going to look like. Life is going to change completely. Everyone's desperate to tell you the horror stories of how difficult it is having a baby, and you're in the trenches for 12 weeks and at the start trying to get through as much sleep as you possibly can, and try and not let your baby die. Ultimately, that's the goal, right, in the first 12 weeks. So, but I think I'm heading into it with an element of excitement rather than
yeah,
nervousness. It's excitement, and I'm sure there's going to be some crap times where we're surviving on 45 minutes sleep in a 24-hour period, etc.
yeah.
um,
But you
but
will
yeah,
survive. That's the most
yeah, this is
important
it.
thing. You will survive.
And it's flippant probably to say, but literally billions of people have had kids and cope with it in much worse circumstances than we're in. So I'm sure we'll be fine.
Yeah,
But yeah, my wife and I probably I don't know. I was going to say probably we're a bit older than normal. I don't know what the average age for parenting is now, but yeah, I think as we get towards our late 30s, it's going to be a little bit harder maybe, just because we are going to be more tired and my body is knackered from all these years of rugby, so that's going to be slightly more difficult, I guess. But yeah, so I think, but as a balance, as a bit of a yardstick that I can continue to measure, I will keep focusing on my purpose during this time, because I think there probably is quite a high chance things might change. My perspectives might change. What's important to me will change. I think maybe how much of myself I pour into work might change. And so and you referenced, James, earlier on, kind of work-life balance, right? And I've spoken at a couple of conferences about this. I completely worked my nuts off during my 20s. My work-life balance was completely wrong. I was working 60, 70 hours a week most of the time during my 20s, and I wouldn't be where I am now unless I'd done that. This isn't me advocating that people need to completely forget everything else in their life and go for that, but I'm a very, very big believer in hard work during that period has led to me being where I am now. But is that balance going to change even further now as I head into fatherhood? Am I going to want to be in the office as much as I have been, or be working as long hours as I have been, when I've got someone at home that I'm going to be desperate to spend time with and see and watch grow and all this other stuff? So I don't know, and it's exciting seeing what that holds and how things are going to balance out.
And again, I'm just listening to you speak, and you just kind of referenced control, care, and adventure in all of that. This sense of, the kind of, you talked about kind of being domineering or not. Like there's an element of control. What does that control look like? But care for your wife through this journey, and then care for the little one first 12 weeks. What's that going to look like? But then this just all wrapped into this sense of adventure. It's something new that's never happened before. What might be possible in all of that? And I guess that's one of the reassuring things about purpose, is that it creates focus. So we just touched upon this, the kind of the need for language that kind of represents the apex, or the bit that's above the water. And for me, that's the bit that evolves, because actually the bits that are underneath the waterline are true and have always been true, and they will continue to be true. It's how you express them, how they give focus, where you want to put the focus. So this concept of balance and work-life balance is, well, I chose to focus in those areas in that moment. That's the outside of the curve. What I do, being a parent is one role you hold. Being a leader is one role you hold. Being a partner is one role you hold. Those are where people will feel purpose from us, where and how we direct it. And so, the opportunity here is, of course, it will change. You're taking on a whole new role, and where and how you want to invest your energy, and where your purpose comes to life in those moments, and how you express it. That's the bit to figure out, right?
100%. And I think if we'd have had this conversation 5 years ago, before I'd been through this journey of uncovering the purpose, I would have said the same words. I probably would have spoken about this the same way, and not connected the fact that actually these words are so intrinsic to me. They are part of my core purpose. I would have completely missed that, because I don't know, I wasn't ready to sit and think about things as deeply as that, maybe.
Love it.
Still the same.
Love it. You know what, my friend? I think this is a really great moment for us to kind of pause this conversation, because I think you've just been able to share with just such clarity this kind of experience over the course of what has only been 6 months, and the impact that has had on you. Can feel it in the way that you talk about the sense that you're able to make, about the excitement about what's to come, the ability to wrestle with tension in the moment, because you can see things in a way that you couldn't see before, and nothing but unbridled excitement from me, and hopefully everybody that's listening, about the adventure that you're going on. Everybody can tell you a horror story. Everybody can. That's just kind of human nature. But to the sound from me, and what I can hear, is it just feels like probably the biggest adventure that you'll have been on to date. So nothing but excitement to come, I'm sure.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you.
Thanks for being with us, my man.
No, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thanks, James.
All right, take care. Massive thank you for taking the time to listen to the Excitable Soul Podcast. If you are interested in uncovering, understanding, and unleashing your sense of purpose, come and explore our purpose immersion programs at theexcitablesoul.com. We look forward to hearing from you there, or being with you on our next episode. Have an incredible day.